every minute of every day. 300 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube.
I watched most of it.
Can you guess how long it would take to watch everything on Netflix, Chris?
7 years.
8 months.
Ah,
8 months,
not as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah, so you can start that as soon as we finish this.
I have a life goal.
What about Spotify? To listen to all of the music on Spotify. Clue, it would
All
take...
of the music?
It would take slightly
the
longer.
The music or all of it?
All of it.
6 months.
230 years.
Oh, I'm not very good at math, so, which I'm discovering right now.
The world of entertainment, right, is so vast. The world of digital entertainment is even bigger. So how does a brand navigate its way through this world in order to hit a target audience? With us to explore this journey, we welcome Gary Cohen, Brand Partnerships Director at ATC Management and ATC Live, and Lucille Essey, SVP, Executive Creative Director and Show Director at Jack Morton. Welcome to our balcony.
Thank you.
How do you navigate the world of entertainment, Lucille?
I navigate it on a personal level by what resonates with me. It's really quite simple, and what I feel comfortable watching and what I feel nourishes me, and that's you know, it's a personal choice, and that's how I navigate it. Yeah.
Gary?
Well, I come from the music side, so we manage music artists, and I run relationships with brands. So we're really only at the very tip of the iceberg. It's a rapidly changing landscape in terms of how brands want to engage around music. It's probably where sports was 10 or 15 years ago. So it very much depends on the dynamic of the brand and their own personal challenges about what they're trying to achieve through music.
Now, despite how bad I am at math,
Yeah.
discoverability is a huge issue. So, I mean, what resonates with you may change from day to day, and you may not even
Absolutely.
find it ever.
Absolutely.
So how do you guys navigate that with your clients or with the experiences that you're creating?
I think it's really understanding what the client wants to say, and that means really getting under the skin of the brand. And once you have an understanding of them and what they want to say, then it's a lot easier to navigate that. But sometimes they'll be wanting to say something with someone that's not quite right for them. And that can get a little bit challenging, especially if they're fixated on a particular direction. So it's kind of massaging them away from that, because you've got to be the eyes and the ears of the consumer on their behalf. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, I think from our point of view with musicians and brands, it used to be very transactional. And the reason it's now more a sense of partnership is that from the artist's point of view, they can use that brand's reach to increase their own profile or bring projects to life that they couldn't otherwise have done so. So it's becoming a lot more collaborative. And when we assess whether we want to work with a particular brand or not, that brand's reach, retail network, digital presence, all those things come into play, not just the size of the check.
And how much creative navigation goes back and forth in that relationship?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, you know, sometimes the relationships, they are bringing the artist in to be essentially the creative director, like the recent Rihanna deal. And that's happening more and more because in the fashion sector, anytime a brand has launched a particular range with a musician, it's been a success at the till. So there's going to be more and more of those things where they're not just using the artist for their face and image, they're using the artist for their creative sensibility.
More and more artists are now standing up for issues they feel passionately about, social justice. They get involved in politics, make it very clear what they stand for in a way they haven't before. That must come with its own challenges when it comes to aligning themselves with brands and how far brands are willing to go.
Yes, absolutely. And I think my area, I take care of Greater China, so it's quite different to what it is here. Firstly, the artist has to be aligned with the government. That's the first point of departure.
Aligned in what way?
Ideologically. So we have brands wanting to bring artists from the US, wanting to bring artists from the UK, and very often we know it's before we even start negotiating with artists, we know it's a no-go because the government's not going to give the okay. So it's a very different landscape in China. And to your point, Gary, what you were saying earlier is I think artists in Europe and North America will use a brand to will use their network to expand their reach, whereas in China it's quite the opposite, where it's the brands are wanting to use the artists and the entertainers to expand their reach and to reach their followers because they have such a strong following on social media.
Gary, how does that contrast with what you do?
There's no question that on both sides there's a lot more due diligence. It's very dangerous for an artist to align with a brand that all of a sudden may have a very negative impact. From the artist side, there's always clauses in every contract if you do anything that...
Right, morality clauses.
Yeah,
Sure.
there's always clauses in those contracts. But as Lucille says, the world is rapidly changing, so every market is different. We may get asked to go and do something in a market for a company who is very closely aligned to that government, and the artist may just be really uncomfortable with that government's policies. So
ultimately, who makes those decisions?
Well, us as the artist management, but essentially we always bring the artist to the table, and we would never ask an artist to do something they were uncomfortable doing.
Is that sometimes where some of the best innovation comes from, when you ask how and maybe not know?
We found that the best innovation comes if a brand knows that they want to work with an artist, knows that artist's fans are important to them, but leaves a bit of room for how that partnership may come to life. And that void is filled with the artist at the table. So if the artist is contributing to the creative output, it's always a lot more powerful. Yeah.
We are talking about entertainment here with so much ear and eye candy out there. How can brands break through with content that's entertaining but meaningful and engaging at the same time?
I think it's got to come, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, there has to be a message. It can't be an entertainer for entertainer's sake. There's got to be a message that's driving it. The brand needs to have something to say, and the consumers, their target market, need to want to hear that message. So it's quite a fine line, I think, that they have to walk. And, something that I experienced here in Cannes was I went to a talk where Procter & Gamble, yes. They were talking about their association with John Mayer. And that was really, John Legend. And that was really interesting because you were saying it leaves scope for the artist, and you could feel that John Legend was completely himself, and yet there was a brand alignment there, and they're doing wonderful, wonderful things.
Do you think that entertainment can perhaps be the solution to some of the biggest issues of our time in a way that perhaps government's politics can't address?
It's an unusual one. Some artists run scared of making political statements.
Absolutely.
For fear it will alienate them in some way. I do. I think it's so wonderful to see. We had this thing in the UK, the Extinction Rebellion, where it was kids basically telling us, you're messing up the climate you're taking our future from us. Same with the Parkland shooting in the States. That was driven by kids. So it's almost beholden upon us as the artists they look up to tap into that state of mind.
Well, I would imagine it's also difficult for them to navigate because, on one hand, especially if it's entertainment for entertainment's sake, in the case of the shootings, the people were looking for the hip hop community, for instance, to stand up and say and do things.
Yeah.
And while that happened, it was very minimal.
Very minimal.
And so, we just heard Migos playing from one of the other stages a second ago.
Yeah.
And they do a lot of brand deals and things like that. So there's this gray area safe zone that artists play in.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to Tina's point, I don't think they can necessarily be the solution, but I think they can be a tool, and they can really help the cause because they have captive eyes and ears. And I think it's almost incumbent on them in this day and age to have something of value and social significance to say.
Yeah. Do either of you have a guilty pleasure musically?
I do.
Good
You said
question.
hip hop.
I've probably got a few of them actually.
Yeah.
We'll have to get your playlist.
Yeah, but we've been talking a lot about the work here being purpose-driven. We talk about brand activism. Can you not just now also have entertainment for entertainment's sake? The Burger King, their campaign, the Whopper, 1 cent, trolling McDonald's, that was just pure fun.
Yeah.
And that
Oh
has been
no, yeah,
award-winning.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, for brands, the functionality of the brand is no longer really ever enough now. You've got to tap into the consumer's lifestyle, know their passion points, which is often music, and as long as you bring them closer to the artists you love, give them I was there moments, that type of thing, they will feel good about your brand.
Right.
The balance is, we always say to brands, don't shout, whisper. Kind of let the music be the hero. Some brands get wrapped up with how big can we make our logo here. Consumers are smart enough to know this is brought to you by brand X.
Absolutely.
Don't shout, whisper. I'll
Yeah.
take that away. Thank you both very much, Gary, Lucille, for joining us.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right.